Yeah, that's what's good when you don't have hair. Kind of works out okay for you.
Good.
How are you?
So good. Is Marcus?
It's just me and you.
Okay. Great.
He's a pretty go with the flow guy.
Sweet.
So I figure we'll probably just kind of, have him introduce him and talk about his business and where things are. And, because we did the customer service or the customer class, how have things changed since the last time he was here? What does his team look like they're doing now, or what direction does he see? And we'll just ask questions in and out of it.
Great.
I don't have any set questions or anything for him.
Cool.
I just don't think we need it with him.
Yeah. I don't know if Autumn is, Jordan, can you see? Oh, there we go. Does Autumn work with Peter? Do you know?
I don't know. Autumn.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes, here we go.
Awesome.
How's it going, Autumn?
It's going good. Just
We
getting
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
well, how do I get it so you can see me here?
Bottom left corner, start video.
That was there earlier.
Autumn, do you work with Peter?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you work with Peter?
I don't believe so. The name doesn't ring a bell.
Oh, okay. You raised your hand, so we thought you were maybe our guest speaker. So.
Oh,
Peter's here.
Just
Jordan,
trying to find out how I can show myself.
I'm here, but I don't have videos option. Hey, Peter, hold on. Jordan's going to make you a panelist, a presenter. So your video will jump on.
All right.
There he is.
Here I am.
How you doing,
Sorry,
bud?
I have a noon, and so it's kind of a race to get from one to the other.
Good.
No worries.
Are you in Ohio?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, Cincinnati.
I'm in Maui. No, I'm not.
Well, it's 11 o'clock, so let's get started. Joe, do you want to kick it off and maybe introduce Peter, and Peter can finish his introduction? He's got a pretty lengthy resume, so it might take pretty much the whole 45 minutes that we're planning on.
I think we're in for a treat today. Very excited to have Peter on. He was here in Utah not that long ago to talk about his customer experience class, which I thought was amazing. We had great feedback. He has wonderful energy. He's from the Ohio area, correct?
Yeah, Cincinnati. Mm-hmm.
And you have a big team, and you are you're master faculty, correct?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Perfect. So enough of me talking about you. Let's just go ahead and why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then when we're done with that, we can kind of dig into your team and those things after that.
Sure. Whatever you want to do. Okay, so let's see. Joined Keller Williams in 2007. When I decided I was going to be serious about my business, just in time for the Great Recession. Started the Great Recession, I was averaging 2 sales per month. When the Great Recession ended, we'd become the top sales team in the city, doing about 150 units a year. Team grew. By 2013, we were the biggest team in the city. We've been lucky enough to maintain that status since. In 2019, we did 351 units for 78 million in volume. In 2017, I stepped out of production and launched Keller Williams Seven Hills Realty. So I'm the OP of Market Center there. I'm happy to share with you that we just became one of the top 10 offices by transaction in all of Cincinnati out of 694. So that's exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah. Let's see. What else? I'm an investor in Keller Williams London Bridge, which is a market center over in England. Master faculty, MAPS mastery coach. I also wrote the MAPS group coaching program on customer experience, and part of Gary's top agent mastermind. So those are the roles I have at KW.
That's all?
Yeah, that's all.
So Peter, I'm sure, just we'll jump into your team a little bit. I'm sure when you started out building your team and everything, I'm sure you didn't make any mistakes along the way.
No, I was flawless, perfect
Yeah.
the whole way.
Yeah. So when you first built your team, tell us about some of the mistakes that you made and what you would have done differently along the way.
Oh, where do you want me to start?
Let's start
Okay.
where it was you and your first, second, and third hire.
First hire was part-time assistant. Second hire was a full-time buyer's agent. There was no concept of a showing agent back then. I did not stick with the model, which should have been 2 administrative people first. I have an extreme behavioral profile, and my conversion rates, which is a nice way of saying I'm impatient, and my conversion rates with buyers were horrible. And so certainly best practice would be hire your first 2 admin. I needed to get out of the buyer side of the business as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I did that, our buyer conversion rates, it didn't increase, they soared. So then I was full-time. I was working listings, full-time administrative assistant, and then we did a second full-time buyer's agent. And that was our makeup for like 4 years during the Great Recession and coming out of it. We were able to do about 150 units with that configuration as we were trying to grow the business.
Yeah, you were running pretty lean. What would be some
Sure.
some changes that you would make looking back on what you did? You mentioned the 2 assistants.
During that time, Joe, it was do or die every single day. And every day you had to wake up and make the choice if you were going to show up and win the day or not. And I don't think I did anything wrong. There were probably more ways to do it right, but I got crazy and intentional about scripts and dialogues, about affirmations. I moved since I didn't know anybody except for my mother, and I didn't want her help. And so I didn't have a database. I was doing lead gen without exaggerating 3 hours a day. And then on Saturdays, I knocked doors for 3 hours. I mean, it was do or die. And it was a fight. It was a fight for 4 years to grow by at least 24%. We grew at least 25% every year for 5 years during the worst economic. Actually, the Great Recession was worse for the housing industry. The Great Recession was actually worse than the Great Depression. So maintaining acute growth took absolutely everything I had, and it depleted me. So what were my mistakes? Maybe I didn't introduce enough balance, or I didn't really focus on my own personal care in terms of maintaining my energy, maintaining positive emotions. I mean, I was really fueled by anger for about 4 or 5 years. And we talked about this a little bit when I was out in Utah. Anger is explosive energy, but it also takes its toll over time. So I didn't take good enough care of myself. And I think probably the other thing was I was so focused on surviving and thriving that I didn't invest in the relationships with the people around me, and all of my investment was in myself and never in the people I was in business with. And that really created some separation between me and my team during that time period. And it took a ton to repair some of those relationships. Once we came out of the Great Recession, I realized while I was helping my team grow financially and skill up, the way I treated my team, the way I treated my clients was really damaging. and not intentionally so. I was just so focused and so extreme in my behavior that I damaged some relationships in the process.
And, during that process, what ends up I see is that, would you agree that your SOI and your database suffered by the turn and burn that you were doing at the time, or were you pretty good at balancing the two out?
No, I was terrible. The Great Recession, if you wanted to grow a business, you had one option: expireds or expireds, because that was where the leads were. And I didn't have a sphere. So I was doing telephone jujitsu for 3 hours a day. And then I was doing heavily scripted, highly aggressive, close early, close fast, listing, one shot, one kill listing presentations. And my love language was, I'm going to get your house sold and outperform the market. And so I believed I was doing a great job for people, but I was actually doing, I was doing them right by my definition, but I was doing them wrong by their own. I told the story when I was out in Utah speaking. I built a big business when we started to level off in growth in 2015. And I finally caved and called my database for the first time. And I started rekindling some of those relationships. I realized just how much I had damaged some of those relationships, and I had not earned the right to stay in relationship and earn their future referrals. That was a slap in the face. For one of the top producing agents in Cincinnati in 2015 and the top sales team, our repeat and referral rate, and I had been in the business at that point for 13 years, our repeat and referral rate was 17%. Abysmal. And it's just because of the business model that I chose, the skills that I chose to invest in, and really a lack of sensitivity to how I was treating other people in the process.
Yeah. Peter, let me ask you this. Even when you were in Utah, I appreciate you coming out to Utah. I think it was a fantastic class.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Once we get back to a little bit of the physical trainings, love to get you back out here.
Yeah,
but when we were there, we were chatting even about, your trajectory of your team, and even comparable, to my team that I've built the last 10 years. Yep. But, success isn't this like straight up line. We talk about the stair stepper method quite often. Yeah. One of the questions that was thrown out in just our Q&A was, you mentioned something about a hire that you made that kind of really jumped you up. Like, can you reflect back even on the last 10, 12 years of your team, when you went from 24 to 351 deals? Like, can you reflect back that maybe there was just like 1 or 2 or 3 very important hires or things that you did that just catapulted you up, on that next stair?
Yeah, that's a great question, Johnny. And I don't know, I'm sure somebody else has said this before. I believe that a great business is 2 things. It's great systems and good or great people combined. That's really all business is. Great systems work by great people. And probably a culture to wrap it up if I had to choose a third thing. So some critical moments in the way. One was when I decided that I was going to create a culture of productivity. And that was in 2016. And we went from 192 units in 2015 to 256 in 2016 with 2 less people and no more advertising spent. And it was a combination of 3 things. One was focusing on the customer's experience. The second one was working on our database. The third one was, that was the year that we introduced scripting every single morning and lead generating as a team every single morning. And that was transformational. It took probably about 18 months to really create a culture of productivity that was not a culture of personality. It was a systemized, it was a belief system that everybody was bought into. And if somebody left and somebody came in, that's just the way it was. That didn't change. And that took a long time to generate, to foster, I should say. That was me side by side with them every single day, leading the role play, skilling people up, helping them see the difference, and being there right next to them, lead generating I did that with them for 3.5 years before I finally started backing off a little bit on the lead gen. And I continued to lead gen when I was launching my market center. I was lead generating for agent talent while they were lead generating with their databases and their internet leads and everything else. So that was like the first thing, was creating a culture of productivity. and being willing to stand for that when somebody was not a cultural fit for that new value system. The second great hire that I made was our lead listing specialist, whose name is James. I had failed at getting out of production with 4 different people. And James was my 5th shot. And I had matured a lot as a leader and as a human. And I got the right guy. And we have had just an amazing business relationship, personal relationship. His first year with us, he did 72 sales. The second, he did 108 sales, and he averages just around 100 sales per year right now. And he has actually trained our other 2 listing specialists. So the 3 of them now drive probably about 60% of, probably about 50% of our team's business right now. So he was the second hire. And I got to talk to him blue in the face about him if you want to talk about what made James the right hire for a listing specialist, as well as what was the compensation plan, because what you read in the MREA may not be feasible depending on the economics of your local market, right? And then I would say the third hire that's been instrumental is the new director of operations that I hired in August of last year. I'm a high D, high C, like I believe you are, Johnny. And what I'm good at is systems and standards and data and analysis and strategy. And what I've always been not as good at is people. I'm an introvert, and too much people problems really wears me down. So anyway, we were recognized not just regionally, but people around the country would fly to shadow our sales team back in 2015, 2016, because operationally we were so tight, like we were just watertight. It was awesome. And then our operations manager left, and I mishired for that role twice. And in the course of about 3 years, the team almost imploded because it had become so fractured from the wrong leadership in that. I don't want to say the wrong leadership. I had talented people, but their talents didn't match the role. And so the team was really imploding quickly and becoming fractured. And 2 things happened. I reinvented our business model. And then about a year later, I hired Melissa, our director of operations, excuse me. And she completes me in that she is good with people, but she's also a very high D and runs really, really fast. So I finally have that person on the other side of the row, or the other side of the aisle, so to speak, who speaks my language, knows my speed, and is pushing with new ideas, not just executing my own. Yeah. So I would say those are probably the 3 pivotal moments. I would also say, and then I'll shut up because I'm going for a while here. I would also say the other thing is I just grew up. You know, like I was operating out of a place of ego and financial desperation when I started. And all the success that I experienced was grounded in behavior, reinforcing behavior that was ego-driven and financially driven. When I started to lose core members of the team was when I realized it was who I was showing up as a person that was, number 1, preventing me recruiting the talent that I wanted to have in my market center, also on my team. Number 2 was also driving away the talent that I had been in relationship with a long period of time. And that was it really took me 4 or 5 years to get over myself all over again. And transformational coaching and some tough conversations with some people whose opinion I really valued to recognize where I was sabotaging not only my own success, but also the success of the people that took risks being in business with me. And
Peter, you know what's true is your business grows to the extent that you do, right?
Always.
And yeah, and so you said something that was really interesting, that you went back and you reevaluated your business model. which do you think by doing that, it allowed you to have more clarity around where you wanted to go and the things you expected so that you could hire to your new business model?
Yes, is the short answer. I think that was a moment of, I don't want to say desperation, but it was one of those transformational moments where like how you show up determines whether or not you win. And I had hired somebody who was in an important role that was highly destructive. And on top of that, I had put that person in charge because I was launching a market center, which by the way is brutal and consumes you, even though you think you got your act together. And so the damage was twice as much because I wasn't there to see what was happening and correct that sooner. So that was also happening when technology was starting to rear its head in our industry. And I was genuinely concerned for our business model and ultimately the income of the people that I was in relationship with. And those two things were catalysts for reinventing the business model. And that business model, which included me no longer selling, absolutely categorically, positively would fail if I did not put other people's success first. And so when I made that commitment in my head, which was a logical one, not an emotional one, that was like the last piece of the puzzle for me to grow up enough to be a real leader and earn the right to be in relationship with and help people grow themselves, their incomes, and the team as a result.
That's pretty
So
awesome.
one of the things you said when you prefaced it, you were doing 24 deals, pre-recession, came out clearly as like a very top team in the country, probably at that time, like, which is fantastic, success. But with that mindset, even being at Keller Williams, we're a little bit spoiled, I guess, because we're so used to like when we face adversity or a down market or whatever, we don't just survive. We don't even just thrive. Like we explode through those down markets.
Yes.
What are you doing right now to really position yourself on the other side of this coronavirus and the pandemic and all that to like go from 350 to 1,000 or whatever your goals may be?
Yeah. I love that question. Well, let's start tactical. Tactically, what we realized was that our team converts at a 4% conversion rate, generally speaking. 25 contacts yields an appointment. Pretty standard for us. We saw that drop to 2.5% during the first 3 weeks after our stay-at-home order was introduced. And so what we recognized, by the way, we were on track to have our best year ever. We're averaging over 40 sales a month right now. We're actually at 50 month to date for April. But we were not booking enough appointments. And so we did two things. The first one was, because that's the lead indicator to your future closings. So we did two things. The first one was we increased our contact minimum standard for the team by 40%. So team standard is 40 contacts per week. Easy. We increased that to 55 contacts per week. So we went from 4 days of lead generating 2 hours per day to 5 hours of lead generating 2 hours per day. So instead of 10 contacts 4 days a week, we went to 11 contacts 5 days a week, which is fine because we're all home more, right? You're just trading one activity for the other. And the other thing we did was we changed how we were booking appointments. And what we found, which is really exciting, and I think this is something that becomes a thing afterwards when all this returns to normal, we're finding that it's way easier to book a buyer consultation virtually than it is to book it physically. So our buyer appointment conversion rates are now through the roof, and we're signing 1-year buyer agreements with people virtually. We're doing our buyer consultation. We're signing them virtually, even if they're not ready to buy yet. We're tying them up right now. We did, can I give you some numbers?
Yeah. Love to.
Because I think numbers help illustrate points, right?
Mm-hmm.
Month to date, well, let me just go back a month. Let me give you a baseline first. And I'm going into our tracking system here. In March, we booked 28 buyer consultations and signed 23 buyer agreements, doing the physical buyer appointment model. Month to date, so 28 and 23, month to date, we're not even finished in April yet. We've booked 56 buyer appointments, so more than twice as much, and we've signed 39 buyer agreements in 27 days. So that's an example, I believe, of, kind of reinventing how you do business based on the opportunities that the current environment provides. Are all these people ready to buy today? No, but we got them tied up. They ain't going anywhere else. And we're also able to make that connection with the prospect earlier on in the cultivation or the nurture relationship. So we're gonna on the back end of these things, when we return to whatever the new normal is, we've got an amazing book of business lined up, and we're still popping deals. I mean, we're month to date, we've penned 20 buyers, so it's still happening. So that's like boots on the ground. Tactically, that's how we've changed things. We also saw and so by the way, since we made that change on how we're engaging with buyer prospects, our lead conversion rate has gone from 4% to 5%. So it's actually increased. So now it's 20 contacts yields appointment instead of 25 pre-stay-at-home order, which is fascinating to me. And also illustrates how there's silver linings in absolutely every single moment that you're in, if you're willing to take some risks. And one of the things that I think, I'm talking too much again.
No, you're
One
good.
of the things that I think we talk about at Keller Williams is the model. Yes, the model. Once you master the model, then you have the right to tinker with it. Don't forget that, right? It's okay to tinker with the model and bring in some creativity once you've mastered the fundamentals. And that's what we did. I think that's a great illustration of that.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that, because I've seen some things that have come out even for me as a team leader on my recruiting, right? Being able to go through and do a tech audit and talking to people about our technology, It is so much more impactful on Zoom, where I can share the screen and walk.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And literally go through all that stuff. So, if we would have talked about this a couple of weeks or like 2 months ago and said, hey, Mr. Buyer, why don't we meet on Zoom and we'll talk about this? Okay. They would have thought that we had lost our mind, but now that grandma and grandpa and family are on Zoom and they're getting used to it, it's a whole new way. Because an agent that I one of the top producing agents in California, I have the privilege of talking to her every morning, and she was in Gary's mastermind yesterday. And Gary had mentioned and said, this is the new normal. We have to prepare in part of your operations manual to have a place in there, because if something like this happens again, we are going to have a time when we're going to be locked down again. So we have to figure out a way to be able to run our businesses and have an absolute understanding of where we're going to do and what we're going to do. So with that said, what are some of the things that you can see going on into the future from this new normal?
Well, if you ask me to predict the future, you're setting me up for 100% fail rate. But I think that a couple thoughts. One is there will be two parallel. There may be. I think there's a bunch of silver linings in this. One of them is we are going to become way more efficient with our time.
Absolutely.
Which is awesome. I've already seen it. We're way more productive as a team than we are now than we were 30 days ago.
Hey, Peter, you know what? I just want to say this really quick. It's amazing how much work you can get done. And I'm talking even with the staff, with limited hours that we're getting done in the full time. So this whole thing has really shown us how to run our businesses leaner on every level, market center, team.
Totally.
Well,
the funny thing is, all this technology and all this capability existed. We were all just too set in our ways, and it was a great market. So why would we want to mess with anything, right? I think it's interestingly let me stick to real estate. There will be consumers who will want the high touch, high service, high FaceTime, hand holding, traditional fiduciary realtor. Great. There is going to be a generation of buyers and sellers who finally have real estate work the way they like it, right? Millennials and all the future generations, where it's a little bit more digital, it's a little bit more virtual, it's a little bit more transactional. And the agents that are going to not survive but thrive must learn how to create a great experience doing primarily a digitally based sale. So I think you'll have both of these models running in parallel. Now, the great news about that is that prior to coronavirus, we all felt like technology was threatening our very existence, and that it was going to displace the traditional realtor, with this really scary artificial intelligence shadow monster that was going to broker sales for $20. This kind of lets some of the air out of that boogeyman, right? Because we're actually using technology to adapt to a lot of its promises around efficiencies before it really has been able to manifest itself fully in our industry. Now, could that create commission compression? Yeah, that's a real concern. But I like this prospect of commission compression where the agent has learned how to be more efficient, learned how to be more digitally based, more transactional, more virtual before technology was able to catch up to what we do as realtors. So I actually think long-term for our industry, there's a huge opportunity.
Yep.
Got to adapt.
I agree. Johnny, what are you thinking?
Yeah, Peter, let me switch gears a little bit, because one of the things that I'm very impressed about you is like the diversity of like what you've almost compiled as far as like your streams of income and your skill set. What I've learned, being in leadership for 10, 11 years is that most people are probably best off if they just really just laser focus on like, the sales path, or we've got fantastic, just pure leaders, TLs, OPs, or even you go down the coaching or master faculty route, like, or people just commit their whole lives just to that one thing. But you've really compiled this width of, market center leadership, which also includes your London thing, which you throw some worldwide into it. That even brings a whole nother layer of complexity. Yeah. Your team is awesome, but even just you go down the road of master faculty coaching, I'm sure you even have profit share and investing, but how do you manage that in the limited, room inside your head, I guess? How do you handle that skillfully?
I don't know that I do, if I'm being transparent. I'm always honest if I'm being transparent. You can't be everything to everybody. And when I came to Keller Williams a year after I read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, and I always wanted to be in investment real estate and development. And I realized I needed money, and that these sales teams were a wicked good source. They were cash cows. They are cash cows, right? If you want to run one of these things correctly, it's phenomenal cash, just cash. It's beautiful, right? And that cash was designed to fuel other investments and other opportunities for passive income. Pursuing MAPS Mastery and pursuing OP, ego was a part of it for MAPS Mastery, let's be honest. I knew it would make me a better leader. I thought it might make me a better recruiter. That's why I did MAPS Mastery. I don't even coach anybody right now. When people ask me, I say no, because it's just, I can't be everything, Johnny, to your point. OP properly done can be pretty well leveraged if you have a strong team leader, a strong leadership team, and good financial fundamentals. Master faculty was pure passion for me. I love training, as you guys probably picked up on, and I think I'm pretty good at it. And for me, it's a pay it forward. The OP and being an OP and being master faculty are ways for me to pay it forward. This company transforms lives. If you just listen and get over yourself and implement and take some risks and experiment with thinking different ways and doing different activities, this company is a platform for self-actualization at its highest level, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, I joined Keller Williams because I read the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, and I'd resisted long enough, and then I finally caved and came over. And my very first class, Nikki Ubaldini taught Quantum Leap. And this was like a week into going to Keller Williams, this 2-day bender on identity and value system. And like, it was soul crushing. Like I was crying. I was angry at myself. I pissed my life away, at age 32 or whatever. It was also transformational. And that cannot be repaid back. It can only be paid forward. And that's why I do the training.
Peter, I remember just that piece right there. I remember I was doing Train the Trainer with Bev and Dick Dillingham. Okay.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And I remember I'm sitting in there and I thought I was hot stuff. And I remember at the end when they say, so how does everybody think Joe did? And Bev looked at everybody and said, was everybody completely lost like I was? I swear, and I'm not kidding you. And I had like Rachel Adams and Zach Younger, and
Oh, you had some hot shots in there.
I had everybody in that room, and everybody raised their hand, right? And I was like, I was crushed, right? And I remember going to my car and just saying, this training and stuff is just not for me. And I remember Bev called me on my ride home, and she said, Joe, I know how you're feeling right now, but the way you're feeling is exactly where you need to be. And at that point in time, I was like, she's exactly right. But, I tell these recruits, I've been focusing on a lot of top recruits, and I've been telling them, no matter how big you think you are, you could never outgrow Keller Williams, ever.
Sure. Right.
And it's one of those things that it's such a blessing that I wish that other people would be able to do. I mean, just being around people like you, So what would be your one bit of advice for these agents or people that actually have teams moving forward in where we are, like where we're going? I mean, what would be to prepare for the path and the vision of kind of the new norm?
Yeah. First thing is you got to have the right mindset. This is not ending on May 5th when we all go back to work or whatever is happening in Utah. This is the beginning of a large shift. After the payroll protection program or whatever it is has run its course and we're done burning money to keep ourselves warm, the recession will kick in. It can't not. And we're all going to have to work a little bit harder to make a little bit less money. And that's the gift of the recession, is that you're going to learn how to work hard. You're going to learn how to be the best agent you can. You're going to learn new skills, new habits, new schedule, new best practices to survive and thrive. And when the market returns, which it always does, I'll always bet against on the American economy versus any other one. When the market does return, that is where the explosion of growth happens. Going from 24 units a year to 150 units a year took everything I had and almost broke me. Going from 150 units to 350 units was a walk in the park compared to that.
100%.
And by the way, we're actually on track to do 500 this year. And the only difference between 350 and 500 is just more time developing it is just the physical manifestation of life lessons that I started to learn in the Great Recession. And it just goes like this, and then it starts to go like that. And it's only because how you show up today, every day we have a choice, right? The choice is, how do I want to show up today? And when you find yourself in a point of adversity, and we're not in adversity right now, we will be in about 30 to 60 days. Again, I'm predicting the future, and that's always dangerous. But assuming adversity is coming, the choices that you make every morning when you wake up are not just going to determine your income in 2020. It's going to determine your career for the next 10 years. And not just your career, but your life. And the degree that you're willing to experiment and learn new things and think differently and try new things and adopt new best practices and new schedule and new energy management, those choices today determine the trajectory of your life for the next 10 to 15 years. And the more you double down and invest in showing up strong in the moment, the bigger your life gets on the other side. And I can promise you that's the truth.
Question just from one of our rainmakers. Do you ever record any of those virtual buyer appointments that you would be potentially willing to share how you guys handle those?
Sure.
Cool. And I think what you said was a perfect segue just on, your morning will either break or make your real estate career to some degree. Like, what does your mornings look like? What's your morning routine, and how do you stay productive?
I used to get up at 5, but now that I don't commute to the office, I get up at 5:30. I do a 25-minute meditation, and then I do journaling for 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how it's all flowing. After that, I review my 411. I come up with my 20% list for the day and my 80% list for the day. I will respond to all the emails from the day before. So what I'm doing there is I'm hitting the ball back in everybody's court before they're up. So I have my morning won't be hijacked by them and their emails. And then around like 7 o'clock, I go upstairs, shower, get dressed like I'm going to work, because I am. Spend 10 or 15 minutes with my wife and kids. And then by 8 o'clock, I'm at my desk working.
That's awesome. So what book are you reading right now that's not a Keller Williams book?
Yeah, I'm reading two. I'm reading Atomic Habits, and I'm reading, I don't remember it just got here yesterday. I just started reading it yesterday. It's a guide to buying and selling commercial multifamily properties.
That's awesome. Johnny, you have another question?
So are you a real estate investor? Do you currently own units and commercial properties? What's that look like, and what's your strategy around that?
Okay, so that's an awesome question. They're all great questions. That's just front of mind for me right now, top of mind for me right now. So
Johnny, you ask great questions.
Yeah, Joe, yours are okay, but Johnny's are amazing.
He is unbelievable.
You're like the best.
Joe's question even makes sense. Right. Or what
Yeah, I couldn't follow him. Raise your hand if you didn't understand his question.
Yeah, what are you talking about, Joe?
So, yes, I made some terrible real estate investments earlier on, and I really became gun shy of them. I've just gotten back into it. We have a couple single families. I started another company last year with a guy who's recognized in Cincinnati as one of the kind of like top multifamily specialists. And he and I have started a business. Our team is called the Chabris Group, TCG, and this company is called TCG Investment Services, and it does two things. The first is it generates off-market, small residential investment opportunities, first for our team and second for their investors, because I want our team to start building wealth through real estate. So 1 to 4 family units. The other thing that we do is we are doing syndication deals for purchasing larger multifamilies. In Cincinnati, kind of the cat's gotten out of the bag. The word's gotten out that Cincinnati is a great city for cash flow. And so now you have massive REITs snapping up 100 plus units in Cincinnati because of cash flow. But there's an interesting middle market between like 20 units and maybe 50 to 75 units. And in that space, you still have owner operators that are not particularly professional. And they're going to start feeling a lot of pain over the next year or two. They're generally mismanaged in a good economy. And when the economy hits south, I think they're really going to struggle. That area is not pursued by the large scale institutional investors. And that's where we think the biggest value plays are. So we're compiling a database and our investor list right now, actually, to start pursuing those. And we think we'll make our first acquisition probably Q3 of this year. So we're focusing on like 30 to 75 to 80 unit buildings.
Well, because you had mentioned when you were throwing out your numbers, I just used my calculator earlier, that your average purchase price on your team sells is probably somewhere around 220,000, correct?
Yeah, roughly. A little more than that.
Which much. Probably means on the investing side of things, to go further in detail, is your rent price over your sales price ratios are probably really high. Like you get a pretty awesome income on rent for what your purchase price is.
Yeah, I think my computer might just frozen. Can you guys see me? Okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so the rent to value ratio, which is kind of one of the first go-to values that investors go to, is generally the rule of thumb is at least 1%. In Cincinnati, it's more like 1.2% because our purchase prices are so low. So my kids bought a property recently for, I think, 84 grand. No, 74 grand all in, and it rents for 1,200.
Wow.
So you don't want the one. Now that's a good deal, but you don't want that 1% rent to value in Cincinnati. So you've got to buy a little more. To answer your point, yes, cash flow is good as long as you know what you're looking for.
So hey, if there was a question that a great question Johnny should have asked you, but he didn't, what would that be?
I think, what are the 2 sexiest words in real estate? That would be a great question to ask me.
Oof. Well, then what are they?
Sexiest words. Joe Gilmore.
I don't think those are words, but you know what? I would agree with that, though.
I'm going to give 3 parting thoughts. The first is the sexiest words in any business are systematic and consistent. And the consistent application of great systems will always yield success. It's a mathematical fact. And too many of us get into this to be entrepreneurial cowboys, and we don't realize that this business, like every other business out there, is a business based on systems. Your financial system, your lead generation system, your customer service system, your people service system, your energy management system, all of it. It's just systems. And the clearer you are on your systems and the more consistent you are in following them, the greater the degree and the faster your success comes.
This is a great business when you're in business with great people.
Yes. 100%. Any business is, well, yeah, that's exactly right. Great people make any good business better.
Right.
And I'm probably not going to be popular for saying this, Joe, but I believe that great systems are actually more important than great people. That probably I know that's not cool to say that, but I think it's a fact. If you read like the 1 Minute Manager, 13 Fatal Mistakes Managers Make, there's a great passage in there that basically says great systems will beat great people every single time, because great people without a playbook to run from, they're just going to run around like a bunch of eagles flying into each other.
Right. Yeah, because I was a basketball coach for years and years.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, if I opened the gym, rolled the ball in the gym, and I said I'll be back in an hour and a half, and I did that every day.
Yeah.
There would be some big problems, okay? I mean, you have to have great systems. And the other thing is, like we talked about earlier, when you have systems, you have clarity around the people that you're looking to hire, and you can really hire and find the best talent to plug in for the system you have.
100%. That was good. Johnny, you might, I don't know.
He's taking the crown. Yep.
I've been, hey, here's the thing. I've been hanging around Johnny, so I know, I'm picking up on his stuff. I think he was going to say that, but I had to steal it from him first.
I was on mute. Yeah, Peter, one of the things I like about you is, you remind me a lot of one of the, most successful people in the real estate industry would be Gary Keller. He has a high D and a high C behavior, right? And I think that's sometimes the mistake that we see with a lot of our natural relationship-based behavioral styles is they're just so good with people and it's so instinctive and they communicate so effectively. But like one of the things that you probably do as well as Gary is you research, you find the model. And once you've found the right model, your D kicks in and you're already 1,000 miles an hour down the road, right? And I think that sometimes is mistakes that I see with a lot of our relationship-based agents and rainmakers is they jump into stuff way too quick because they consider the analyticalness or the spreadsheets or the data or whatever boring. And part of that is you have to commit yourself to moving from that entrepreneurial to that purposeful and finding the right path and make sure it's the right one. Then you run 1,000,000 miles an hour, right?
It's interesting, Johnny. I think you're absolutely right. And there will also come a time in our growth, Joe said it, we all know it, your business will only grow as much as you do. And I had playbooked my way as far as I could with my natural strengths, and that got us to about 256 sales. It wasn't until I started building up the non-natural skill set, the people skill set, that we were able to start growing again, right? I had a phenomenal system. I just couldn't attract the right people or have the right relationship with them to grow with that system. So that once I'd gone as far as I could with my natural skill set, I had to start understanding and learning people. Which the second takeaway I want to leave everybody with is that people matter. They matter more than anything else. And for all the agents that are out there building teams, I think it's awesome. You will always be limited by the degree of the time that you spend focusing on building the team for you. It's okay to have ego. It's okay to have drive. I've got plenty of both of those things, but your business will never outgrow you as long as you're focused on yourself first.
100. Amen, brother.
And that took me a long time to figure out. I got it. I got that, but I didn't really get it in my heart. And then the third thing that I would say Not that you asked for a third. But the third thing that I would say is that culture beats everything, right? Peter Drucker is credited with saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And for all of us that are part of something, the culture that got you the results that you had today will not get you those results in the future. So each of us as OPs, as team leaders, as mega agents, as productivity coaches, as MCAs, as DFIs, agent services, all of us are custodians of the culture of the organizations that we're a part of. And each of us needs to identify, how is culture good? How does it need to change to sustain? And what are the different value system, if any, needs to be introduced into our culture to make sure it sustains in the new normal?
And what's fascinating, I coach a lot of agents and teams, and one of the things that I find is that you'll have a team that's reached a certain level, but they're having a really hard time with keeping leverage and people in their organization.
Yes.
The biggest problem that I find once I know that, you truly have to believe in your heart that you care more about the people that are working for you than you do yourself, because they read that, and you'll consistently have that turnover until you can have a culture where you care about the people who are in your organization more than you do about yourself.
Yeah. Plus standards.
Plus standards. Well, yes, of course. Of course. So before I let you go, so I like to ask this question, all right?
Yeah.
If you could go to dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, who would they be?
Gary, of course. I've had lunch with him, but not dinner. I think Yuval Noah Harari wrote *Sapiens*. You guys familiar with that book?
Mm-mm.
May not be popular in Utah.
Say it again.
*Sapiens* is the name of the book by Yuval Noah Harari.
Mm-mm. Never heard of it.
Fascinating book. He's a deep thinker. And then what would be a third one? Oh, Dave Grohl.
Oh, wow. That's a cool one.
Yeah, *Sapiens*. Autumn is saying, it's *Sapiens* with a plural. It's just he's like a historic anthropologist, sociologist. His perspective on the evolution of humanity is depressing and pretty insightful.
Hey, Peter, you've been amazing, man.
Look, I just got to be clear on that.
You're amazing. You're an amazing guy, and I know you're super busy, like we talked about. And for you to take the time to spend with our region, we really, really appreciate it. And so, how can people get a hold of you if they need any? They have business in the Ohio area.
Oh yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Our website, probably my email address is easiest. It's Peter at ask, ASK like the question, and then TCG, which is Tango Charlie Golf. Peter at asktcg.com, or just go to asktcg.com and send out a form.
And if I heard there was a little rumor going around that you're thinking about moving to Utah, we have some good agents out here also.
Yeah, I fancy there's probably a couple there that could help us. We're debating between Colorado and Utah, so you guys have better powder, and that's really important for me.
And we have better people, so come on now.
That is true.
That is true. Peter, thanks so much,
Peter, man. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are also Autumn. There's a .com at the end of that. Sorry, it's Peter at asktcg.com.
Cool.
You guys are awesome. I really enjoyed heading out there last year, and I hope we can travel again come wintertime, and we can do it again.
You're always welcome, right, Johnny?
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Peter. Thanks for being on the call today, buddy.
You guys are awesome.
And Peter, I'm going to work on my question ability also for our next time when we meet. Okay. Have a good one, brother.
Goodbye, guys. Thank you.